home and remotely using Zoom. We're all aware of the measures in place. Now, from the Competition Bureau, we have Anthony Durocher, Deputy Commissioner, Competition Promotion Branch, Christian McWhinney, Deputy Commissioner, Monopolistic Practices Directorate, Department of Citizenship and Immigration. We have Sarah Hayward, Acting Senior Director, Immigration Program Guidance, Philip Somagivari, Director General, Strategic Policy and Planning, and Matthew Graham, Director, Levels Planning and Migration Analysis. From Statistics Canada, we have Greg Peterson, Assistant Chief Statistician, Economic Statistics, José Bégin, Director General, Labour Market, Education and Socio-Economic Well-Being, Wu Longgu, Senior Advisor, Analytical Studies and Modeling Branch, and finally, TBS, James Van Raalte, Executive Director, Regulatory Policy and Cooperation Directorate, Regulatory Affairs Sector. So thank you to all these witnesses here today. We very much appreciate your presence, and we are going to end our study on competition, hopefully. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Durocher. Thank you. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, thank you for the invitation to appear before you today. My name is Anthony Durocher, and I am Deputy Commissioner of the Competition Promotion Branch at the Competition Bureau. I am joined by my colleague, Krista McWhinney, Deputy Commissioner of the Monopolistic Practices Directorate. We are here today to support your study on small and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs. The Bureau's long-held position is that SMEs are the bedrock of a dynamic and resilient economy. While many SMEs were hard hit by the pandemic, they remain an important engine of inclusive economic growth. They challenge established incumbents and disrupt entire industries. The Competition Bureau enforces the Competition Act, which recognizes the vital role of SMEs at the outset in its Purpose Clause. It states that maintaining and encouraging competition is central to ensuring that small and medium-sized enterprises have an equitable opportunity to participate in the Canadian economy.
For example, we stop anti-competitive business practices that seek to limit SMEs from challenging bigger players. We require businesses to tell the truth about their products and services so that consumers aren't misled away from using products and services of SMEs. We prevent anti-competitive mergers and punish price fixing and other forms of collusion to ensure SMEs can access inputs at competitive prices. We advocate for government rules that ensure a level playing field for SMEs. To achieve these goals, we need the right tools to address competition issues in a timely and effective manner. The Competition Act amendments set out in the Budget Implementation Act are an important step, but those changes are just the beginning. We are very pleased that the government has committed to consult broadly on the role and functioning of the Competition Act and its enforcement regime. In February of this year, we made a public submission to Senator Whetstone's consultation on modernizing the Competition Act. The ideas put forward are based on our experience in administering and enforcing the law across all sectors of the economy. The Bureau remains focused and motivated in its role as Canada's competition authority and looks forward to an ongoing, vigorous, and inclusive debate on how best to achieve these goals. We look forward to your questions.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, je passerai maintenant la...
Thank you. Now, Mrs. Hayward, from the Department of Citizenship and Immigration.
Chair, if it's okay with you, may I deliver opening remarks for IRCC?
It is absolutely okay. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for having me, committee members. I'd like to begin by acknowledging I'm joining you from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. I'm pleased to provide an overview of the immigration system and its role in addressing labor and skills shortages. As we know, Canada is currently facing labor shortages across the country, and each sector is feeling the impact. As noted by my ESDC counterparts in their appearance before this committee, most of the solutions to meeting these challenges are made in Canada and include school leavers, training and skills development of the labor force, and addressing barriers to underrepresented groups. Immigration, though, is one of the tools that helps provide additional labor and complements efforts to build domestic capacity. It's an increasingly important contributor to Canada's prosperity and economic growth. IRCC manages a number of temporary and permanent economic immigration programs that support the development of a strong Canadian economy and ensures the benefits of immigration are shared across all regions. On the permanent side, the immigration system has multiple pathways to welcome economic immigrants who bring us skills to our economy and help fill gaps in our labor force. They are typically educated, fill targeted labor and skill shortages, contribute to innovation, workforce diversity, and are able to integrate into the Canadian labor market with ease. Our high-skilled programs, managed through an application management system known as Express Entry, helps Canada stay competitive and attract talent from around the world. IRCC has also implemented several pilots and programs to support rural and remote regions across a range of skills levels. Immigration is a shared responsibility between the federal and provincial and territorial governments, and almost all jurisdictions operate provincial nominee programs that cater to their specific labor force needs. Regional immigration programs and pilots, such as the Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot and the Atlantic Immigration Program, allow jurisdictions to respond to their unique conditions, prioritizing the attraction and retention of skilled workers in the sectors and occupations with identified needs. The government also announced plans to attract record numbers of immigrants to help Canada grow. In 2021, Canada welcomed a record number of permanent residents at 405,000, and Canada aims to continue welcoming immigrants at a rate of just over 1% of Canada's population. This means targets of just under 432,000 in 2022 and just over 447,000 in 2023. On the temporary side, foreign workers and international students play a significant role in Canada's economy. They address immediate workforce needs of diverse employers, provide a wide range of skills levels and educational attainment, and facilitate business growth, innovation, and productivity. Canada's temporary worker programs are demand-driven, flexible, and responsive to the changing labor market landscape. There are no caps on the number of foreign workers who can be authorized to work temporarily. Employers can use temporary worker programs to tap into global pools of labor and talent to fill vacancies in any occupation. The number of students and temporary residents who are authorized to work, including a portion of ESDC's TFW program, has been growing year over year, reaching around 1.5 million temporary residents in Canada in each of the past 3 years. Their contributions have been even more apparent during the COVID-19 pandemic and during Canada's economic recovery as they help employers in essential industries fill jobs when no Canadian citizens or permanent residents are available. In recognition of their importance to Canada's recovery and to respond to border restrictions, in 2021, a time-limited temporary to permanent resident pathway was introduced to help us retain the talent of over 90,000 essential workers and international graduates. Many of these new residents work for small and medium-sized enterprises and continue to support them. Some jobs are temporary in nature, and it is not the desire of every student or migrant worker to remain permanently. Our system also is limited in the number of individuals who can become permanent residents in a year, and in the case of permanent immigration, individuals are selected based on factors that will contribute to their economic success. Whatever the labor market looks like in the future, however it evolves and gets disrupted, our economically selected migrants need to be able to weather downturns and have transferable skills and attributes. To ensure the immigration system continues to adapt to an evolving economy, the government announced a number of new measures to further contribute to meet labor market needs and support SMEs. Through the budget, the immigration minister will have the authority to better select candidates who meet a range of economic and labor force needs. Additional measures to address Canada's labor shortages have also been recently announced. These include faster processing of permanent resident applications and more flexibility around work permits for students and visitors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My colleagues and I are happy to take questions.
Merci beaucoup. Je passerai maintenant la parole au...
Thank you. Now, Statistics Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, members. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Greg Peterson. I'm the Assistant Chief Statistician responsible for Statistics Canada's Economic Statistics Program, and I'm joined today by José Bégin, the Director General responsible for labor market, education, and socioeconomic statistics. Also joining me is Wulong Gu, a Senior Advisor in our Analytical Studies and Modeling Branch. SMEs are a vital part of the Canadian economy. In 2021, small businesses were employing over 10.3 million people, 2/3 of the overall labor force, and medium businesses were employing another 3.4 million people. La proportion d'entreprises qui ont indiqué leur pénurie de main-d'œuvre.
The number of businesses that express labor shortages to be an obstacle has almost doubled in the last 15 months to 37%. Most indicators are pointing to an increasingly tight labor market in Canada, with the demand for workers accelerating to record levels during the second half of 2021. Job vacancies in the fourth quarter rose to 80%, compared with pre-pandemic levels, reflecting a broad-based increase across provinces and industrial sectors. Last month, the unemployment rate fell to a near historic low of 5.1%, while the participation rate was near a record high among core-aged workers. To help attract and retain staff, businesses are also adjusting their wage plans. In the 3 years leading up to April 2022, wages among new hires rose by 15.4% compared with 12.1% for established employees. In the first quarter of 2022, over 2/5, 45% of businesses reported that they plan to raise wages for existing employees over the coming year. It is important to note that while wages have been on an upward trend since the fall of 2021, their growth has remained below the inflation rate.
Series of supply chain is an issue. In the second quarter of 2022, more businesses experienced an increased difficulty in sourcing inputs domestically compared to the number of businesses experiencing difficulty in acquiring inputs from abroad. Over 40% of businesses experienced this difficulty in acquiring inputs, products, or supplies from within Canada to persist for 12 months or more, and 39.3% of businesses experienced the same difficulty in acquiring inputs or products or supplies from abroad. In general, we're finding that businesses are responding to these difficulties in supply chains by carrying more inventory. I'd like to turn for a second to inflation. And while much attention is focused on the Consumer Price Index, Statistics Canada follows prices all along the supply chain. In general, these prices are increasing at every stage. The Raw Material Price Index measures the prices for raw materials purchased by Canadian manufacturers. In March 2022, this index was 64.4% higher than January 2020, prior to the pandemic. The Industrial Product Price Index measures the prices at the factory gate of products sold by manufacturers operating in Canada. And again, in March 2022, the IPPI was nearly 30% higher than January 2020. The Wholesale Service Price Index measures the margin price that Canadian wholesalers receive for their products. In December 2021, the last data point we have available, the index was 12.1% higher than January 2020. The Retail Service Price Index measures the margin price of Canadian retailers that they receive for their products. The Retail Service Price Index didn't increase too much during the pandemic, but had moderate increases throughout 2020. Between 2019 and 2020, the Retail Service Price Index increased by 1.9% and further increased to 4.8% between 2020 and 2021. So in all, businesses are facing increased input costs. From Q1 2021 to Q1 2022, there's been a steady increase across almost all industries that the rising costs of inputs are being identified as an obstacle to business. And over 1/3 of businesses reported they plan on passing increased costs of inputs to their consumers. This challenge is accentuated by SMEs, where 75% cite rising costs of inputs as an obstacle, while 30% cite it as a major obstacle. Statistics Canada has been closely following how SMEs have fared during the pandemic, as they're important drivers of the Canadian economy. In addition to our standard suite of products, we have partnered with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce early in the pandemic to launch a forward-facing survey of business conditions. And more recently, we've started working with them on a business data lab in order to better support the public and private sectors in making decisions in this area. Mr. Chair, this is a brief summary of the constraints facing Canadian businesses that we're measuring, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peterson. We'll now move finally to the Conseil du Trésor, donc Monsieur Van Raalte.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members, for inviting me to join you today. My remarks will focus on how Canada's federal regulatory policy and modernization agenda responds to the needs and concerns of Canadian small and medium enterprises. And I'd also like to share some of the key policy challenges we are seeing in this space. The Government of Canada policy that sets out how regulatory departments and agencies must develop, manage, and review federal regulations is called the Cabinet Directive on Regulation. The directive asks regulators to, quote, consider the impact of proposed regulations on small businesses to ensure that they do not unnecessarily bear a disproportionate burden when complying with regulations, end quote. To determine whether there are impacts on small businesses, regulators must apply what we refer to as the small business lens. If there are impacts, they must explain how they were factored into the regulatory design, as well as any flexibility that responds to small businesses' needs within the regulation. Flexibility can come in the form of delaying implementation, offering exemptions, reducing reporting frequency, etc. We find that about 20% of the time there are impacts on small businesses when departments come forward with new regulatory proposals. There's also a rule within the federal regulatory system that controls administrative burden on business, known as the one-for-one rule. Established in policy in 2012 and under the Red Tape Reduction Act in 2015, this rule requires that for every new dollar of administrative burden imposed on business, a dollar must be removed. It also requires that for every new regulation that imposes new administrative burden on business, a regulation must be repealed from the books. As of March 31st, 2021, $60.5 million in net annualized reductions have been observed under the rule, and there's also been a net reduction of 185 regulations. Part of our role at TBS is to ensure regulators are complying with these rules and to report annually on the application of the one-for-one rule. In addition, TBS leads the government's regulatory modernization effort to facilitate competitiveness, agility, and innovation within the Canadian regulatory system and address inefficiency while ensuring important protections for Canadians and the environment. We have regulatory cooperation fora with the United States, the European Union, and provinces and territories in order to reduce the regulatory differences across jurisdictions and remove barriers to trade. We lead thematic regulatory reviews to identify rules and practices that are creating bottlenecks to growth and innovation and develop plans to address them. We host a Center for Regulatory Innovation that focuses on building capacity for regulators to design flexible regulations that enable new and innovative products to come to market. And we have a regular TBS-sponsored legislative initiative that removes requirements that stand in the way of modernizing regulations. In support of this agenda, a committee of stakeholders external to government advises Treasury Board on ways to improve regulatory competitiveness in Canada, promote excellence, growth, and innovation. The committee most recently recommended that the government take a practical approach to help regulators assess the impact of regulations on competitiveness. We commissioned the OECD to learn about what other countries are doing to understand these impacts. The OECD report was clear. Each country has their own approach, and there is no standardized way to measure regulatory competitiveness. Following on this, we've taken our external advisory committee's approach and are consulting with stakeholders on a draft tool designed to be a practical self-assessment checklist to help unearth potential competitiveness impacts that are top of mind to Canadian businesses as regulatory proposals come forward. The recommendations made by the external committee are consistent with what we've learned from the COVID-19 pandemic and by monitoring how our regulatory policy compares to other top countries, exposing key opportunities and challenges. First, while we rank third in the OECD, stakeholder engagement isn't working for everyone. Modernization requires more frequent and meaningful consultation with stakeholders. However, we are hearing that many stakeholders are experiencing consultation fatigue and lack the capacity, knowledge, and resources necessary to contribute effectively. This challenge also contributes to a lack of diverse representation. 2, businesses are concerned with the impact of cumulative regulatory burden on competitiveness. This issue is significant yet complex. It implicates the federal government, provinces, municipalities, and international regulations. And there are no recognized ways to objectively measure cumulative burden or compare across jurisdictions. There's a real need for better regulatory data to help search, identify, and address this cumulative burden efficiently. 3, regulators could make better use of digital solutions and embrace user-centric approaches to improve service delivery. Simply put, being responsive to Canadian demands to Canadians demands new ways of working with a focus on digitalization. Fourth, while the one-for-one rule controls the creation of new burden, the burden that lies in existing regulations is not getting enough attention. Canada ranks 6th place in the OECD's regulatory policy ranking on post-implementation review, reinforcing a need to improve the way we examine the existing regulatory stock to ensure it is relevant and performing as intended. Finally, while there is greater demand for agility in regulation, for example, by incorporating standards by reference, stakeholders also require predictable regulatory regimes in which to operate, and there is a tension in finding the right balance between these opposing objectives, agility and predictability. As we look to address these challenges, I welcome the insights this committee can offer about ways the regulatory system can be more responsive to small and medium enterprises and support regulatory efficiency and competitiveness more broadly while maintaining Canada's high standards for health, safety, security, and environmental stewardship. I'd be pleased to expand upon these points I've raised and answer your questions, Mr. Chair.
Merci beaucoup. Donc, on peut maintenant commencer la...
Thank you. Now the first round of questions. Mrs. Gray, 6 minutes.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of the witnesses for being here today. I'll first go to Statistics Canada. When it comes to the labour and job numbers, and you did cite some here today in your opening remarks, which are reported by Stats Canada, are these total jobs or are they broken down between full-time and part-time?
Thank you for the question. We do collect data on both full-time and part-time jobs. Maybe if I can turn to José Bégin.
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, we do collect information, and we also release information broken down by various elements such as part-time, full-time, occupations, industries.
Great, thank you very much. And does that also analyze the wages of these jobs, specifically the ones that have been gained back?
So in terms of wages, we have several sources of information from which we produce information. And then again, we can break that down. We can break that down by type of employment. So whether it's in private or public sector, as well as the self-employed. And then we can also do the same thing, but from the business angle. So looking at small, medium, and large businesses.
Great, thank you very much. If you would be able to table for this committee the average wages of these jobs, and as you were mentioning, by sector, both pre-pandemic and then the current numbers that you have, if you'd be able to table that for this committee. Thank you. The next question that I have is, we know that inflation's really affecting people's homes and businesses. And I heard that the calculation for food inflation by Stats Canada has been changed. Can you confirm that this is true?
No, we haven't changed the way in which we've calculated food inflation.
Okay. Is this something that you are looking at? There's reports that this is something that Stats Canada is looking at.
When in the measurement of the CPI, we continually sort of review our methodology. We take a look at best practices from other countries. It's standard practice for us. So we always make sure that we're up to date in our current methodology.
So when was the last time that the CPI model was amended or changed?
The way in which we calculate the CPI itself hasn't changed. I'm sorry if I can presume, are you asking about sort of the basket weights that we use to calculate the CPI?
Well, my question is, when was the last time that the calculation was changed for CPI? Has it been, recently over the last few years, or is it something that's done once every 20 years? When would the last time have been, or is it something that's amended every year? And if it's something that that has changed in particular over the last couple of years, if that's something that you would be able to table for this committee?
Sure. The method that we use to calculate the CPI hasn't changed sort of significantly as long as I can remember. What we do periodically update is the weights of the various commodities that we use to compile the CPI. For a long time, we did this every 5 years. A few years back, we changed to doing this every 2 years. as soon as the pandemic hit, we've changed to sort of updating the basket every year. We released our last sort of basket update just earlier this week, and it'll be applied to the CPI release that we have coming out next week.
Okay, so you are changing the calculations then. So what I'm hearing you say, it's not necessarily the items themselves, but the weight that's given to the items. Is that what you had just said? Just so that we're clear.
At Statistics Canada, we do periodically change. Well, the CPI is essentially sort of a weighted average of a basket of goods that an average basket of goods consumed by Canadian households. Over time, this basket changes. One reason why it could change is because there are commodities that may have existed in the past that don't exist anymore. Think of DVDs or video cassette tapes. Or the introduction of new commodities, like the internet or cell phones. So the composition of the basket is continually updated. The weights that are applied sort of over the course of the pandemic, we decided to sort of increase the frequency of those updates so that we could sort of better reflect the change in consumption patterns of Canadian households.
Great.
But that's not a change in the methodology per se, but rather a change in the way in which the weights that we apply to the various commodities that feed into the CPI.
Great, thank you. So based on that then, if you've continually been changing the weights to the different commodities and the different items, is that something that you would be able to table this to committee so that and on whatever is, how many times you've done it in particular since 2020 and up to the most recent change that you made?
Yep, that information is contained in the report that we released earlier this week, and we'll make the link available to the committee.
Great, thank you very much. One of the other things I wanted to ask about was credit card interchange fees, and many small businesses I speak to tell me that with more cashless transactions, they're paying more in interchange fees than ever before. Can you table for the committee any statistics that you may have on what small businesses are paying, not only on interchange fees, because we know sort of what the baseline is, but do you have any information on all of the fees that would be related to what a business, in particular a small business, would pay for their full credit card transaction processing?
Yeah, I'm not certain that we collect information on those fees paid by small businesses.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. My next questions, I will go to Mr. Van Ralt. Thank you for being here from the Treasury Board. In early 2015, the former government passed the Red Tape Reduction Act, and you mentioned actually the one-for-one law in your opening statement to ensure that regulators remove regulation for every new regulation. So is this something that is currently being enforced by the department?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chair. Absolutely, it's the law, and not only is it being enforced, but we report on it on an annual basis, and that report is public.
Great. Now, previously...
Gray. I'm sorry, we're out of time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So we'll now move to Madame Lapointe for 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you.
Department of Citizenship and Immigration. So throughout this study, we've heard that immigration is seen as a potential mitigator of labor shortage challenges, which seem to be pervasive across all sectors, but particularly for SMEs. Now, my riding is in Northern Ontario, and the Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot Program is very popular amongst employers. Every time we have a roundtable with the Chamber or with SMEs, they tell us that it is a vital component to their ability to continue to operate. Now, the pilot program is scheduled to end in October of this year, and I wanted to know if there is a plan to make this program permanent.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for the question. I don't have a specific answer with respect to whether or not the regional and the rural and northern immigration pilot will become permanent. What I can say is that, given the time it started, we've been slowly being able to ramp up admissions and incorporate new new regions into the pilot itself. And so we clearly will need to have some time to be able to review the program and just to watch the functioning of the program. So what I can say is that the department is monitoring this very closely, and based on the ongoing review as we move towards the end of the pilot, there will likely be advice given as to whether or not to extend this pilot further. But thank you for the question.
In the reviews that you've done to date, is it your assessment that the pilot program has achieved what it was designed to do?
Thank you for the question. I can say that, again, going back to when the pilot was launched, in other words, during up to and during the COVID-19 pandemic, and despite those challenges, we've already had 755 admissions since its launch, which, it may not seem like a lot, but given that this is a pilot program and given the time it started, these are very encouraging signals in terms of the pilot. And as I said, we'll continue to monitor it as it continues and hope to see further admissions through the pilot.
Okay. So the federal budget of 2021 invested over $430 million to develop and deliver an enterprise-wide digital platform so that it could gradually replace IRCC's global case management system with the goal of improving application processing and support for applicants. Can you provide the committee today an update on the development and implementation of this program?
Thanks for the question. With respect to the platform modernization initiative, I can say, though I don't have the specific knowledge of this, but I can say that there's been quite a lot of development in terms of being able to scope out the requirements and in terms of what the department would need or would want to have operationalized through the new platform. There's also been significant engagements with industry to start getting a sense of what the new platform needs to do and to build it for the future. And in the meantime, continuing to try to update and get the most flexibility out of the global case management system as possible, because in terms of ultimately implementing platform modernization, there's still a ways to go, and therefore in parallel, the department continues to digitize, to modernize its processes, and essentially get the most it can out of the GCMS.
With immigration accounting for almost 100% of Canada's labor force growth, and with Canada facing critical labor shortages, and again, I hear that a lot in many sectors in my writing, how can we assist SMEs with accessing labor through our immigration system?
Thank you for the question. I think in terms of how we can assist, the department's, trying to take strides in terms of how it engages and interacts with clients in terms of providing as much information as possible. And, some of what we're trying to do involves just to have better tools and resources on our websites, trying to have more contact with and hear from SMEs and other stakeholders to get a sense of what their needs are. And there are also some facilitative mechanisms. For instance, one of the innovations that was put in place was the dedicated service channel that have referrals of growth enterprises in Canada that seek top skilled foreign national talent, and therefore that's one of the other ideas in terms of this sort of gloved service to be able to give more assistance to SMEs amongst others and high growth firms to help them through navigate the immigration process. And the other thing I'll say is also ongoing work, including through client experience and interaction with clients, is to be able to, for instance, simplify application forms and when possible to take those learnings and be able to essentially essentially simplify the processes at the front end. Thanks.
You know, we hear certainly a lot about the shortage of skilled labor, and I'm wondering if there's any kind of dialogue at the ministry about being strategic about our immigration approaches to address specifically those skilled labor shortages. I think about the pathways that were created that really helped us with personal support workers, which was really essential, especially during COVID in our long-term care system.
Yes, thank you for the question. Indeed, the reference to the temporary to permanent resident immigration stream, which was particularly useful during the border closures last year, and being able to retain those temporary workers, particularly in essential occupations, as well as students and graduates to be able to apply for permanent residence and to remain in Canada. I would say as well, in terms of some of the thinking we're doing in terms of targeting our economic immigration to meet the needs of the labor market, as was recently introduced in the Senate, are amendments to the Immigration Refugee Protection Act to permit the minister, upon consultation and in order to achieve an economic goal, to be able to conduct category-based rounds within express entry. And what this essentially means is to provide more specificity into pinpointing and selecting those with particular attributes, including particular occupations, to be invited to apply for permanent residence and express entry.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to Monsieur Lemire pour 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. Thank you for your presentations. My question is for the Department of Citizenship and Immigration in the Canada Gazette. In July 2021, we learned that the department is doing all kinds of checks for LMIAs. So I imagine that there are many inspections that have nothing to do with the fact to ensure that a Canadian cannot do the work of the immigrant. Over 47,200 businesses are small businesses, and they are all subject to issues and delays due to the temporary foreign worker programs that are totally illogical. The government shuffles the costs onto the SMEs. We can certainly do some things differently and not force businesses to pay for these delays. As requests are languishing in offices, we're losing a lot of money. We've learned from the Manufacturing Association of Quebec that the loss of revenue is almost $18 billion. That's what they testified to here before our committee. But if we come back to LMIAs, this cannot be done once the immigrants are here. So could we suspend the process of LMIAs, at least for Quebec workers?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. LMIAs fall within the purview of ESDC, Employment and Social Development Canada. What I can say is that there have been facilitative measures that have been arranged within the TFWP as specifically pertains to Quebec. These were announced in August 2021 and include raising the cap on the low-wage TFWs a Quebec employer may hire, and expanding the simplified process for accessing a labor market impact assessment to National Occupation Classification C, which is akin to what's already in place for classification level A and B. Just in general, with respect to processing times and delays, I can speak, directly for our department, but clearly we don't want those processing time delays, and are working very hard to come back to our processing times for work permit issuance by the end of the year is the goal that we've set. So in that sense, clearly we're of the view as well that such delays are not good for business, and frankly they're not good with respect to our department as well. Thank you.
Je suis content d'entendre la volonté.
I'm pleased to hear this. There's a Quebec report with a chart with the number of LMIAs that were requested each and every month in 2020, 2021, and also in 2022. Could we see this and the number of decisions and also the breakdown of the positive, negative responses and the number of suspended decisions, and then the reasons why the LMIAs were refused in Quebec and the number of refusals for those years for each of these reasons? Given with the labor shortage, this seems to be striking different federal departments. Could you also table a report for the LMIA in Quebec, a table showing us how many employees are working to study LMIAs for 2020, 2021? How much time is spent on a file, and how many files have to be completed per week per employee? This would help us to understand the process and why it's so long. The refusal of Ottawa to transfer to Quebec the LMIA process is purely political, and the federal government is making Quebec businesses pay the price. There's nothing that says that Quebec is not able to do this, and they are fully able to do it. The federal government is emitting security checks. Of course, that's normal, and this is the Canada's authority. Why not recognize LMIAs in Quebec and get rid of this doubling up of work?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, and it's been noted the information that was requested, which we'll contact ESDC with respect to the jurisdiction, both jurisdictions and the responsibilities. Again, I'm not privy to conversations with respect to what would be what's within each jurisdiction. What I can say is that IRCC works hard to abide by the letter and spirit of the 1991 Canada-Quebec Accord, which sets out where there's concurrent jurisdiction over temporary and permanent immigration, or whether there's sole selection authority in the case of economic permanent residency. But the questions of the member are noted.
Merci.
Thank you. You also spoke that in the summer of 2021, your department made changes to the Foreign Temporary Worker Program. Following this new regulation done by the department, it's written that the regulatory proposal foresees additional conditions to which employers have to conform themselves. This means that agents from both departments are undertaking new activities to check that these extra conditions have been respected. This prolongs the delays for treating LMIA requests and also inspections with regards for LMIAs. Could you tell us, time is going by, how are these decisions made within your department? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question, and I think the member is referring to the pre-publication of the inspections under the to protect vulnerable workers. So I will say with that, in that respect, both IRCC and ESDC take very seriously the protection of workers from vulnerabilities and recognize that they have a right to the same provincial and territorial and federal employment standards as Canadians and permanent residents. And so, in terms of the changes themselves, which I think have not been received final approval, but certainly, it's our intention by them to be able to better protect foreign workers, whether they're under the Temporary Foreign Worker Program or the International Mobility Program, irrespective of jurisdiction, to ensure that they are receiving adequate wages and working conditions. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to Mr. Massey for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the witnesses for being here on a Friday. I come from Windsor, Ontario, border city. So my question is going to be for immigration to start with. Obviously, at a border city, especially with the volume of traffic, 40,000 vehicles per day, and about 40% of Canada's daily trade by land comes through here and rail. We also get a lot of refugees that are significant, especially during times when the United States has tried to push them outside their country, including some of the companies that were hired to actually move them from Florida and other places. We also have a college, St. Clair College and the University of Windsor, that use international students as part of their base for their educational system that come in from all over the world, been actively recruited. We also have temporary foreign workers, some of the highest numbers in Canada, if not just outside my region, where some people live here and then travel to every single day to work on mushroom farms and other types of greenhouse gas industries, greenhouse agricultural industries. We also have a shortage of skilled labor, being in the manufacturing sector, about my office has already had thousands of inquiries for immigration open. About 30 to 40 per day come in here or to us. And so my question is this, is how strategically wise was it to close the immigration office in the city of Windsor to the public and to those persons? How strategic was that, and when will that be reviewed?
I might turn it to my colleague who might be able to speak more towards our infrastructure and closures during the pandemic.
This was actually closed before the pandemic. It's a facility on Walker Road that actually holds hundreds of people, had ceremonies that I attended for over a decade, that was closed, and people can no longer go there to get assistance. The doors have been barred. The workers are still in there. So I'm just wondering what the strategy was behind basically shutting people out from being able to inquire about that, given the conditions that I've outlined here that are well known and documented.
Thank you, Chair, for the question. I'm afraid I don't have a specific, or I don't have a response for the member, but if we've taken note of the question and if we could get back to the committee.
That's fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a very serious issue, and that's why I listed off the challenges here, because the infrastructure actually exists and is still being either rented or owned by the federal government. The employees are still in there, and people are being turned away. In fact, the other question I'd have is that since we have a shortage of labor, how strategic it is for someone like, for example, I have a single mom that is waiting for her humanitarian case to be completed, who is working with no problems or convictions or issues with the Canadian economy taxpayer. She's actually being deported before her case can be appealed or reviewed, and will then deprive us of another skilled position in the community, in the healthcare system. So how strategic is that to actually deport people that are trying to get to Canadian citizenship from active employment and shortages of workplaces before we actually finalize the decision about their citizenship in Canada?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. Unfortunately, I don't have knowledge of this case, nor can I comment on those types of cases. Deportations.
Well, it could be any case. It could be any case. So let's say somebody is waiting for their humanitarian and compassionate ground case to be reviewed. They're being deported. It could be not only just here in my community, it can be anywhere in Canada. It could be any type of a trade position that's filled with a labor shortage. What is the strategy behind deporting people from a job where we don't even have a replacement for that, and especially in a sector where there might be even more of a shortage like the healthcare, and then have to bring that person back to Canada after breaking up the family or sending even what could be a Canadian citizen being a child to a foreign country they've never actually visited before? What's the strategy behind doing that?
Chair, I'm afraid I don't have an answer to that question.
Okay, well, these are the real things that your department is. And I mean, you just talk about strategy. I'm just wondering what this, how that fits between, dealing with a workforce. So I guess the other one I'd ask is what's the basis of limiting international students to 20 hours per week with employment? Maybe perhaps we can go to that policy. What's the strategy of that, given the fact that, again, we have shortage of people, and those international students pay such high tuition costs. Most are living in poverty at times, going to food banks or bringing over money just to get by. And there's been increased levels of mental illness, depression, and other types of issues because some people think that they're all rich people coming over. It's not true. There's a lot of working class. So what's the strategy of limiting them to 20 hours a week?
Thank you for the question. With respect to international students, the rationale behind the 20 hours per week is just in recognition that the students are primarily here to study. And with respect to financial hardships during the COVID pandemic, several facilitative measures were made for international students with regards to not only extensions, but with respect to the postgraduate work program, which many students avail themselves of.
Okay, so the 20 hours is based upon just a blanket policy as to, and has there been any consideration of changing that or having an exception to that? I know many students that are Canadian that work more than 20 hours a week actually because of the cost of education. I would suggest that that's not probably a number that, and especially when you get to the summer and March breaks and other breaks, they're working extra hours.
Thanks for the question. One of the requirements upon application to study in Canada is to demonstrate, sufficient funds to be able to carry out living and studying over the course of the study in Canada. With respect to if there's any thought to changing the 20-hour a week limit, I can say that the department's constantly reviewing the rules of our different programs, especially with regard to the current context being shortages in the labor market, and the comments of the member are taken.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. I know I'm out of time, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank you. I'm not trying to be difficult, but I have a full-time caseworker dedicated to immigration alone in this office for the public here. And the seriousness of the situation is so bad. The government now is only allowing us to have 5 emails a day for inquiries. And then that we actually have to go on the phones and put a staff on there for hours waiting on the lines. This is the real thing that's happening. In the cases that I mentioned, we have to turn around every single day because we get 5 emails allowed for contact per day. And it's just something that's not helpful for business, the community, and obviously the people that we're serving. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MP Massé. I think your comments resonate with every members around this table. I'll now move to MP Halan for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, I'm very sorry. I think there was a bit of a mix-up. I believe we're going with Monsieur Deltel next.
D'accord, Monsieur Deltel, la parole est à vous.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't going to contest your authority, but thank you. And thank you to all the witnesses. It's always wonderful to debate issues that have an impact on Canadians. Today, we're talking about SMEs. And we are all, as MPs, contacted by business people, and we're all aware that there's a huge problem that's hitting our economy right now, and that has an impact on all SMEs. And it's the labor shortage. There's no magic wand to solve this issue, and there's no single element that can explain the labor shortage, but we also know that this is hard-hitting throughout the world. Now, some things can be done in order to fast-track some processes. For example, today, in many departments, whether it be the Competition Bureau, Citizenship and Immigration, Statistics Canada, TBS, I would like to speak with you, and it's especially for Citizenship and Immigration. I believe that all my colleagues around the table, regardless of the political party, we're all confronted with 2 issues. First of all, the passport issue, and even again this week, we see that someone in my riding waited over 5 hours to deal with the passport issue, and I believe we all have cases like this. The second issue that has a direct impact is immigration. And so I have a few cases in my riding, but I'd like to speak about something that happened this morning. When I was coming here to the main building here, I met 2 Swiss tourists. I heard their accent, and they were looking for information. So I introduced myself, and we spoke a little bit, and I learned that they came here to Canada to meet with their son. Their son had decided to come to Canada and had obtained a visa to come to Canada to discover the charms of Canada. And why am I saying this? Well, because their son arrived on September 29th, 2021. He arrived with a tourist visa, and he has to be renewed every 6 months. Canada is a very welcoming country, so he found his soulmate, so even better. And he also found a job. And the employer is not a corner restaurant, it's the Fairmont. The Fairmont, and so he was prepared to work, but he didn't have a work permit, so then he made a request. The request was made on November 9th of last year. So he went through the testing, biometric tests, everything was fine, except for one thing. He never received an answer since having made the request. So this is a request to work on November the 9th. Then November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June. 7 months later, still no answer from the Department of Immigration to give him a work permit. He wants to work. He was chosen by an employer, and it's not a small employer. His family came here to visit him. All the ingredients for success are there except for one thing: government efficiency. So here's my question. I'm wondering, because we do have representatives here from Citizenship and Immigration, how is it possible that Canada, a G7 country, with hundreds of thousands of civil servants, is not able to manage a successful case?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. Without any further knowledge about that case, I can speak in generality, and I'll sort of reiterate what I said before and unreservedly. Some of the delays with respect to processing temporary and permanent resident authorizations are unfortunate, and we're working very hard to expedite those and to return back to processing time standards. The COVID-19 pandemic, while we're starting to come out the other end of the pandemic itself had caused several challenges to offices with respect to particularly where paper files were necessary and individuals couldn't go in the office, but also with respect to with border restrictions. And so there's right now the department is working hard and based on 85 million that was provided as part of the budget is trying to return to those processing times. And with respect to client interaction, and while the case that was raised by the member is again unfortunate, in terms of the client call center, some of the innovations, including callback features, are meant to provide better client service to individuals. As well, the department is working on other client service tools, which would include things like being able to track one's application. And many of these are features that one would expect to be built into the platform modernization process that's being undertaken by the department. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur Deltel. C'est tout le temps qu'on avait.
Thank you, Mr. Deltel. Your time is up. Maybe we'll come back to this later. Now, I'll give the floor to Mr. Dong.
Chair, I want to thank witness for coming today as well. The focus of the study is around, or the main piece is around enhancing competitiveness of SMEs. So I'm going to have questions first, starting with Competition Bureau, as well the IRCC and StatsCan. So my first question is to the Competition Bureau. We've heard reports about international shipping companies gouging shipping costs or prices in the last 2 years. We've seen sharp increase from anywhere between $3,000-4,000 US all the way to $20,000 US. So I just want to hear from you. Are you aware of this phenomena, and are you doing any what's your understanding of the situation, the cause of these sharp increases?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. We are very much aware of some of the issues globally relating to supply chains and with respect to shipping costs as well. What I can tell you is that we are working with our international partners to coordinate and share information related to supply chain issues that cross borders. So we are hard at work in that respect. And I will let my colleague, Ms. McWhinney, maybe complement my response with the enforcement perspective.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. And just to reiterate on the enforcement side, we are very much aware of the issue of high and rising shipping fees. There may be a number of factors driving these up, but to the extent that that they are higher than they should be as a result of anti-competitive behavior, whether that's an agreement between competitors that would be an issue under the Competition Act or some other form of abusive market power. Those are very much the issues that we would be digging into. Unfortunately, I can't speak
I don't mean to
about
be
the
rude, but
investigative
I have limited time here. Just, I also heard that there has been sharp increases for docking fees, for storage as well. The federal government has put forward quite a bit of money. I think it's in excess of $80 million to help this institution. I just want to ask: do you feel that there's adequate regulations for your enforcement or your investigation into this matter?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we are certainly working to modernize the Competition Bureau in respect of our intelligence capabilities and our enforcement capabilities. Very mindful of the current stresses on the economy as well. From our perspective, as I mentioned in my opening statement, it's very important exercise currently ongoing to modernize the Competition Act and to consult broadly going forward to make sure that we have a Competition Act that has the necessary tools to enable the Bureau to investigate and take appropriate action to protect competition in the economy.
Yeah, this problem is a big piece in the supply chain, and which is happening right now. The challenges are felt every day by constituents when they go to supermarkets, when they go to local department stores, and I look forward to a speedy resolution, actually, especially coming out from your department. My second question is for StatsCan. I wonder, I heard the questions about labor market and SMEs employees said over 10 million jobs across the country. That counts for 2/3. But to my recollection, the Canadian job labor force is in excess of 20 million people, so which should be 1/2. So if you can correct that record or reassure us. Second question is, do you have any study or reports on sort of the under the table job numbers or job that's not being reported? Do you have any stats on that?
To kind of respond to your first question, yes, if we take a look at employment of SMEs, small businesses account for about 10.3 million employees. Medium-sized businesses about 3.4 million employees. Those are the data that we have. In terms of sort of underground work, doing statistics requires data. Sort of counting sort of the number of employees, the number of people, it really depends on the way in which you're capturing that information and kind of the source of that data. For information that we're getting from employers, work that's done under the table, that'll be missing. But we do have sort of other sources of data where we're taking a look at, we're asking households sort of what's happening.
This is directly impacting the competitiveness of small businesses. They are losing talent, they're losing workers to those that are actually willing to pay cash. And in today's economy, there's very little cash is being used at the store from the customer end. So I wonder if there is any way that you can, Stats can capture some of these information, and if there's any way that the Competition Bureau can look into that matter.
Maybe if I can turn to my colleague, Madame Bégin.
Thank you for the question. So in terms of when we conduct the labor force survey amongst the population, we ask question whether the person is employed or currently not employed, and we ask question in terms of if they are away from work and why that is, or how long they've been unemployed. We don't have question in terms of whether or not this is a job that is under the table.
Sure, you
So
won't
I-
ask
we
it
would-
that way.
Well, we
I
don't
hope that
have
there's
that kind of
effort
question.
towards gathering those information going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Je passerai maintenant la parole à Monsieur le Maire, 2 minutes 30.
Mr. Lemire, thank you. I'm going to continue with citizenship and immigration. I'd like to talk about statistics, especially with regards to study permits for Francophone universities in Quebec. Quebec universities have refusal rates in 2015 about 30%. Right now, we're talking about 52% of Francophone universities that are people are refused study permits, compared with 33% elsewhere in Canada. The gap is 20%. For Quebec universities and regions, we're talking about 60 to 80%, depending on the regime of some countries. Anglophone universities in Quebec, McGill, refusal rate is 9%. Concordia, 23%. Bishop, 27%. Témiscamingue, refusal rate 75%. In professional teaching, in some cases, it's even 95% for foreign students that are not from France. Could you reassure me that there is no discrimination, voluntary discrimination, with regards to Quebec or Francophone countries in the measures announced in processing of files?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. I'll turn to my colleague, Matthew Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank the honourable member for the question. With respect to the approval rates for international students destined to Quebec versus destined to the rest of Canada, our department is always reviewing ways to address Quebec's concerns about approval rates for international students. In 2021, of all students who declared English or French as an official language, 57% of those destined to Quebec declared French. When comparing the approval rates for students with French as a declared language, they're very similar, 41% to Quebec and 40% to the rest of Canada, which also holds true for the approval rate between the declared language for French and English students destined to Quebec. The overall approval rate for students destined to Quebec is 41%, and it's about 62% for the rest of Canada.
Donc, la discrimination se fait pour les pays de...
So the discrimination is for countries, for example, the CAC in 2019, over 12,000 CAC were emitted for Algerians. Only 2,000 obtained study permit. If we look at Tunisian students, we're talking about 33% 2016, and then refusals went to 50% in 2020. How can you explain? For France is one thing, but there are many other countries, and our universities in the regions, the Francophone universities, depend on these foreign students. Also, this is part of the strategy to fight against the labor shortage in regions. Thank you.
Excuse me?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank the honourable member for the question. Our department is committed to addressing low visa issuance and study permit approval rates from French-speaking countries in Africa and elsewhere to support Quebec's immigration plan and Canada's competitive edge. As the minister said, we are taking measures to address unconscious bias and ensure consistency in decision-making. All decision makers and processing applications from Africa have completed Government of Canada training to recognize and counter unconscious bias. We're reviewing immigration program outcomes to identify all institutional mechanisms that contribute to any inequitable outcomes for clients to further mitigate against bias. And we've made efforts to attract eligible students in Africa and increase the acceptance rates by engaging in outreach to those partners, as well as at public events. Our IRCC offices located in Africa participate in events such as EduCanada and EduQuebec and regularly host webinars to help explain study permit application process and requirements.
Merci beaucoup. Je passerai maintenant la parole à Monsieur Massé pour...
Thank you, Mr. Massé.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask the Competition Bureau, with regards to one of the larger complaints that we get from smaller SMEs, is the cost for fees for transactions for credit cards, Interact, and also their inability to negotiate good rates. There's been some high-profile, disturbances in the system in the United States, and with Costco and credit cards and Walmart and so forth, using their kind of purchasing power. Just wondering what needs to change in Canada, or has there been a review of this on our side over here? Because the rates seem to be, I guess, for lack of better of analysis, if you don't have, competition, you really just can have default collusion. And I'm just wondering whether there's been any review about that. That's one of the largest things. I actually asked the BDC whether they've actually considered a credit card. They said that they did, or our credit card processing fees. They said they did 10 years ago, but they didn't really give us much of a robust answer other than that. And they followed up with the same kind of, yeah, we did look at that, but that's it, and didn't even give us any details. So we'll have to see if we can get those.
I'm happy to respond to that. Thank you very much for the question. The high credit card fees and the challenge that poses to merchants, particularly small, medium-sized enterprises, is something that the Bureau has very much been live to for quite a number of years now. Our focus under the Act is looking at when there's allegations of anti-competitive conduct that are driving those higher fees. So we don't have anything under the Act that prohibits just the high prices or fees being high. It's really looking at whether there's conduct that is prohibited by the Act driving that. But the Competition Bureau did, in fact, we did bring a case forward to the Competition Tribunal some years back, alleging that conduct by Visa and MasterCard was responsible for inflating those fees. We ultimately lost. The tribunal found that the statutory tests were not made out in that application. And they went further and actually said that this sounds perhaps more suited to a regulatory fix. And on that front, the Competition Bureau is actively engaged with others in government to lend advice on how policy options around this could benefit from a pro-competitive lens.
Yeah, after that credit card, MasterCard got rewarded with $50 million of taxpayers' money for their security program. But I'm glad to hear that. So in a nutshell, the Competition Bureau, which for the record, I believe does an excellent job for what they can do within the law. The laws really are not sufficient for the Competition Bureau to be able to do the full robust protection of consumers compared to other countries. Is that correct?
Well, I think from our perspective, we're undergoing a very important review of the Competition Act. At this time, the amendments that are being proposed in the Budget Implementation Act are a very important start from our perspective. But this phase 2, this further review, to have a robust discussion and hear from all quarters of the economy, because competition impacts everyone, and to make sure that we have effective competition legislation is certainly critical from our perspective to protect consumers, SMEs, and the economy.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Durocher. Monsieur Massé, je passerai la parole.
Thank you. Mr. Cram, 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for joining us today. I would like to start with Statistics Canada. Last month, the committee heard testimony from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. We had Ms. Corrine Pullman join us from CFIB, and she noted that of almost 90% of small business owners surveyed said that, quote, excessive regulations and significant stress to their lives, and almost 2/3 would not advise their children to start a business given the burden of regulation, unquote. So I was wondering, has the Statistics Canada have a way to measure the cost of regulation and over-regulation to small businesses? And if so, what were your findings?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Yes, we have done this in the past, and we've gotten to some aspects of this in more real time. In our business condition survey that we conduct in cooperation with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, we found that in the fourth quarter of 2021, nearly 20% of all businesses felt that government regulations would be an obstacle for them over the next 3 months. This is a variable that we'll continue to track. We have tracked aspects of this over time. The last time that we did a sort of a comprehensive study on regulatory burden was, I believe, in the 2016 reference year. And at that time, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I don't have kind of data immediately available to me. But in 2016, we did undertake a study to sort of understand, what was the regulatory burden faced by small businesses, and we can make that information available to the committee.
Yes, if you could table that for the committee, that would be very helpful. But so I wonder, Mr. Peterson, if you could just speak more in general terms, then that what will happen to the socioeconomic well-being of the country when 2/3 of small business owners tell their children not to get into small businesses because of the burden of regulation. What will Canada look like in a generation or two if this trend continues?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. To be honest with you, I'm not entirely familiar with sort of that study by the CFIB, so I'm probably not the best place to kind of interpret the results. But we will continue to objectively sort of measure sort of what small businesses identify as the burden.
Okay, thank you very much. And I would like to change gears now to the witnesses from the IRCC. All MPs' constituency offices help their constituents navigate different government programs, and the vast majority of the casework that I deal with in my office has to do with IRCC, and particularly just the amount of time it takes to go from the beginning of the process to the end, particularly with temporary foreign workers and permanent residence applications. So what is a typical processing time for those types of applications from start to finish, and what opportunities are there to speed up the process?
Thanks, Chair. It depends on the program. So with respect to permanent residence, to provide an example, within our express entry programs, which is skilled workers, experienced class and skilled trades, and a portion of the provincial nominee programs, our service standards are 6 months following the receipt of a full application in 80% of cases. Now, given some of the delays I've explained and some of the backlogs that were created during COVID, we are not at those times. We're not at those processing times. We're well behind, and we're aware of this. With respect to express entry, however, it is our goal that once we reopen invitations under the express entry program, which is slated in July, that we will be able to return to a 6-month standard for those applications and continue to work through the existing inventory of already received applications. With respect to issuance of work permits, similarly, the standard is 60 days, and we're currently not at that standard, but we're working to get back to that standard as quickly as we can. I think I might, if you'd like more information, I might be able to turn it to my colleague. But have I answered your question?
Yes, and I believe I just ran out of time, so hopefully maybe one of the other MPs will pick up on that line of questioning. Thank you very much, and over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Cram, for your discipline. I will now turn to MP Erskine Smith for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Joel. I want to stay with immigration, and I want to start with the premise that the lack of housing affordability is a challenge to our competitiveness. And that's straightforward because it's harder to attract individuals if we have unaffordable housing, unaffordable childcare as well, but let's stick with housing. And when you are looking at your strategic policy and planning, which you're the Director General of, what conversations do you have with provincial counterparts to ensure that our immigration strategy is consistent with provincial housing strategies?
Thanks for the question. And indeed, housing affordability and availability is something that we're, that we've taken note of, and we take quite seriously because, as the member mentioned, this has an impact on not only the pace, but the volume of immigrants we can let in. Because one of the important things we want is for any immigrant to become economically established in this country, and therefore the lack of affordable housing is quite the concern. We do have tables with provinces and territories where, among other things, things like absorptive capacity in general, but also impact of immigration on infrastructure and housing, but also things like schools and transportation are discussed. And so I can assure the member that these discussions are being had, and it's going to be important to be able to balance and pace growth in a manner that ensures the success of the immigrant. And the other thing I would add is, as part of this, a regional lens is important to, as some of the major population centers may have more acute impacts on things like housing availability, but other infrastructure. So we also work with provinces and territories, to ensure that we're trying to regionalize immigration as much as possible.
I appreciate the regional nature of it. A challenge, though, because we might bring a particular immigration level into Saskatchewan, say, and people might stay there for a particular amount of time before migrating elsewhere, or vice versa. So it can be a challenge, I think, at the national level. But is it fair to say that the immigration levels we set at the national level, are they premised on the availability of housing and housing development at the provincial level?
It's certainly one among many factors that have been
that's
taken
okay.
into
I
consideration.
Understood. We received correspondence back from Service Canada in relation to the TFW program and its impact on wages, and Service Canada, I think, countered the notion that TFW program has a downward pressure on Canadian wages. But then I went back to Professor Scooterud, who'd initially been in touch with me, and he pointed out that estimates consistently point to substantial wage suppression effects with respect to the TFW program. Can you speak to that?
Thanks, Chair. One of the features of the temporary foreign worker program, as opposed to the international mobility program, is the presence of a labor market impact assessment. And among other things, one of the labor market impact assessment goals is to ensure that prevailing or proper wages are being paid based on the occupation that for which the employer is looking for a temporary worker.
That's
so
fair.
Certainly,
but is it not the case, though, that the LMI mitigates but doesn't entirely prevent the downward pressure?
Thank you, Chair. I for that I would need to consult with an academic source.
That's okay. Okay. Well, I did, and he suggests substantial downward pressure. So anyway, I want to move to Treasury Board, because I struggle with this idea of a one-for-one rule sometimes. I want to cut red tape that is ineffective and ineffectual, and I want to keep regulations that matter to public policy. And I don't think it's always a one-for-one rule. And so I wonder, shouldn't the focus be on regulations that make no sense at all and just get in the way? So, and I'll give an example. The fact that a licensed cannabis producer today has to seek out a separate excise tax stamp in every single province that they operate in. Alcohol is not subject to the same requirements. That is a frivolous regulation that gets in the way, imposes costs, and has no public interest value. Why aren't we focused on those issues?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. And I think that speaks to the point I raised about some of the challenges that we're noticing and addressing going forward. As I mentioned, the Treasury Board Secretariat has led 2 rounds of targeted regulatory reviews in an attempt to look backwards at that existing stock and be far more strategic and far more pointy or pressing in terms of how to eliminate ineffective regulations that are already in existence, but also look forward in terms of future-proofing those regulatory frameworks to avoid those types of problems going forward.
And I'm out of time, so my last comment to you on the Treasury Board side is simply also please look at nascent industries to ensure we harmonize with other jurisdictions. You got to prioritize those spaces too. Anyway, thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Nate. We'll now move to Madam Gray for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question is for the Competition Bureau, and this is a quick question. I know that you were speaking about interchange fees as part of the overall credit card processing fees, but I'm wondering if you're also looking at the MDR rates that also are included. Is that some analysis that you've done from a competition point of view? And I don't expect you to have the numbers here today, but is that something that you would be able to table with this committee if you've done some analysis on that?
Mr. Chair, I will be happy to look into that question with my colleagues and come back to the committee as appropriate.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that. My next questions are for Citizenship and Immigration Canada. You had acknowledged that your processing times are not meeting the standards that have been set out, and you're looking to return to processing times. So, what I'm wondering is, what are the current processing times of your department, and what are the standards? How far off are you from what the standards are?
Thank you. I will turn to my colleague, Ms. Hayward.
Hi, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the question. As my colleague previously said, we have different lines of business, and for each line of business, there are different service standards and processing times. And as we have apologized before, we realized that due to COVID and the border closures, and also the closures within our own offices, that processing times on work permits has suffered, and we are working to improve that. Currently, the service standard for regular work permit is 60 days, and we are currently above that, but we are working to improve. Currently, we're at about 100 days.
Okay, so about 100 days. Okay, and that would be across all of the different services? Is that sort of an average?
No, well, that's an average for all work permits, and it is moving downwards.
And from a timeline point of view, when would you expect to be back to meeting the standards on your best, based on your best estimation?
We've been putting a lot of different plans into motion, and we hope to be back within service standards before the end of 2022.
Great, thank you. And can you advise, are there still a lot of employees that are working from home at this point? Or is everyone back at the office now?
All our employees are able to work, and we are working in a hybrid formation at this point. Some people working from a distance in their home, and other people in the office where it's needed.
Do you, would you do analysis for people that are working from home to say, look at their internet, to do internet speed tests, to look at their internet access and see what upgrades might be applicable, if they're even applicable where they live? Is that sort of a process that you do when you do have people working from home?
If I may jump in, thanks, Chair. I think we generally deal with that on an employee by employee basis. So, in terms of what challenges they may be facing in terms of connectivity, and I think the best place is the supervisor of that particular employee to be able to work through it. And so, whether that would mean that the employee would need to work in a bricks and mortar environment, or whether there are other workarounds to ensure that the employee can be productive based on their connectivity.
Okay, thank you. Now, just to give an example here, I know even for myself, when I work from home, and I can work from home, I could bring a laptop home or bring my Surface, but everything is slower. Even though I've got, reasonably good internet at home, opening a PDF, attaching is considerably slower. And lots of times if I have, a heavy load of emails and things like that, I'll go to the office because everything is just so much faster. So everything is hardwired and whether it's in Ottawa or back at my constituency. So I'm wondering, is some of these efficiency times increases, are they all volume related, or are they related to the fact that that everything is just can be slower when people are working from home because you're not hardwired into the system and don't have all of the information maybe that you would normally have access to, like files and things like that?
It is all volume driven. COVID caused a lot of pressures with the border closures and people being unable to immediately go into the office and reach paper applications. Since that time, we have done great strides to digitize our applications and get them into our global case management system so they can be processed anywhere in the world. So it is in all contexts, it's a volume driven, trying to get through the inventories that grew exponentially and get back to regular processing times.
Thank you very much, Madam Gray. Just before moving to MP Gahir, I'll grant myself just one question following up on one of the questions Madam Gray just asked. And I don't think there was a clear answer, but any idea of the proportion of employees at IRCC working remotely versus employees working on location?
I don't have exact statistics on who is working where. I can say that overseas, 98% of our missions are open and 97% of our visa application centers are open and offering biometrics, and 99% of our panel physician clinics around the world are also open. All our IRCC offices and service providers within Canada are open. But currently they are limited to a 30% in-person capacity for both employees and clients.
Okay, thank you. I'll move to now for 5 minutes, MP Gahir.
Great, thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for making time for this committee. My questions are mostly for the witnesses from IRCC. And I appreciate your time. I know you're fielding a lot of questions. So as everyone's made very clear, Canada's facing a labor shortage. The riding that I represent actually has the second largest concentration of businesses in Canada. The first is downtown Toronto. A lot of these businesses are facing shortages with regards to skilled trades. What are we doing to attract and retain skilled workers in the trades? Are these programs being marketed? Do people actually know about these programs, that they're available?
Thank you, Chair, very much, and we don't mind taking questions. So with respect to trades, in fact, we do have the Federal Skilled Trades Program. This is within Express Entry, and due to efforts to calibrate our intake to our output, the intake of federal skilled trades has been on pause. But if we look back to prior to the pause, if we look back to 2019, we would actually do separate federal skilled trade invitation rounds to ensure that those who were qualified in the trade program could be invited to apply for permanent residence. And as I mentioned before, in July we'll be reopening Express Entry, and also must say that quite a few tradespeople come in not within the federal skilled trades program, but in programs such as the Canada Experience class and the Federal Skilled Worker class. And I believe the percentage, although my colleague can correct me, was close to 40% of those qualified in trades within Express Entry were in fact coming in through those programs. So there are several avenues. And then as well, I would mention, as I said before, through the provincial nominee program, which not only has streams that can basically bring in tradespersons and tradespersons with employment, they could do so within the context of their particular regional or provincial labor market. Thank you.
Great, thank you. My next question, also for IRCC, is in regards to international students. I know the federal government is in charge of bringing international students to Canada. Is there anything that IRCC can offer once the students are actually here to accommodate them? Is that the function of the IRCC, or is that provincial?
Generally, students once they arrive in Canada, they of course would go to study at their post-secondary education institute, or in some cases a secondary secondary schools, but for the sake of discussion for PSE, and I know many of those post-secondary institutions themselves have supports given high percentages of international students on their campus. Generally, with respect to your question, I think that it's quite limited in terms of any additional supports that IRCC provides to international students per se. And although the institutions that they go to or that they study at are part of a list of designated learning institutions, so in that respect, the government, the federal government, does have oversight over where the students study. And then lastly, based on the nature of the program, part of the initial screens of prospective students would also be their ability to sustain themselves while they're in Canada studying. Thank you for the question.
Great, thank you. So my last question, also for IRCC, is in regards to international students again. Do we have we're taking in a record number, obviously, of international students. Do we have the capacity to take in this many? Is there a conversation that happens between different levels of government of this is the housing we have, this is healthcare, this is, food? Do those conversations happen when we set the target for this is the number of international students we'll bring into the country?
Thanks for the question. In fact, the international student program is demand-driven, so there is no cap on applications for study permits per se. So it's demand-driven where they, and in fact, moreover, they do tend to, in very large numbers, apply for permanent residence through express entry based on often their ability to find work through a postgraduate work permit thereafter. But to answer directly the question, no, there are no caps on intake of international students. Many of them reside on residence as well. So. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup. La parole est à Monsieur Lemire.
Thank you, Mr. Lemire. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question will be, since the study on competition in June 2021 that we will have done, there was a vote in June, a historic vote by parliamentarians that received a royal assent. We will celebrate this anniversary at the end of June. To solve a fiscal injustice by passing Bill C-208. This gives to SMEs, especially families of farmers or fishers, the same tax rate during the sale of their business to a member of family as to the sale of a third party. But in 2021, the Minister of Finance published a press release to announce her intention to push back the implementation of these modifications to January the 1st, 2022, given concerns to the formulations used in the bill. Now we're in June, and nothing has happened. The Minister of Finance, Mrs. Freeland, said that she would give more details. She has not answered yet. Could you help us to indicate if you've been able to bring forth clarifications on this bill, on the application of this bill that received royal assent, and people are waiting to see when details will be available and to table them with the committee?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. The honest answer is that would be under the purview of the Department of Finance, and tax policy and tax regulation is not the responsibility of Treasury Board Secretariat.
OK. Je prends une chance. Puis comme j'ai abusé un peu des autres,
Okay, I was taking a chance, and to respect my colleagues, I'm going to stop there. Well, it's up to you. Well, I would have another question. Yes, I do have more. So you were indicating that there are some employers that don't have the same classification as others. Is there an inspection process that might be haphazard rather than systematic? How can we fast-track the time? Maybe a good employer certificate, if you really hold to inspections to make sure that treatment times are fast-tracked. How can we reduce the delays? How can we make sure that the burden is less heavy?
Thanks for the question. I think that's in relation to inspections under the temporary foreign worker program. I'm not privy particularly to those details, but I can undertake to get a response to the committee if that's okay.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Massey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two quick questions. First, to the Competition Bureau. This committee had a recommendation against the Shaw takeover by Rogers. Just wondering what your thoughts are with regards to your position and how that might affect SMEs with less competition. And then I have a second question, please.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. The Competition Bureau, after a thorough review of the transaction, brought forward an application to the Competition Tribunal to block the merger on the basis that it would lead to a substantial lessening or prevention of competition in wireless services. Of course, I think our action speaks for itself, and the matter is now before the courts.
Okay. Thank you. Over to IRCC. With regards to individuals coming to Canada and then finding out that their skilled professions education is not qualified or is different, why do we continue to have that as a problem, and why can't we get that fixed? I mean, for me in my riding here, if I went and assembled a team from our taxi cab drivers and from those working at variety stores, I could probably get a group that would rival the Manhattan Project group. And I just want to know why continually people arrive into Canada and continually to find out to shock that their qualifications and credentials do not count. How do we fix that problem? Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. And first off, just acknowledge that yes, foreign credential recognition is an issue, and it can be a barrier for the integration of newcomers and to have newcomers working in their chosen occupations in regulatory occupations, which represent roughly 20% of all occupations. IRCC works really closely with the leads at Employment and Social Development Canada, and in turn, we work with provinces and territories who either through them or devolved to regulatory agencies have sort of primary oversight over regulated occupations. And having said that, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada has recently taken strides to provide more, I would say, pre-arrival or pre-landing information and pathfinding to newcomers so that they're aware of what the rules are before they come to Canada. And in some cases are able to start the pathway towards accreditation. And then lastly, there was in Budget 22, 115 million over 5 years, starting in 22 and 23, and 30 million ongoing to expand ESDC's foreign credential recognition program and expand supports particularly to train health professionals. And yeah, so again, just in recap, it is an issue and we're quite aware of it and we're working to resolve it with provincial and territorial partners and ESDC.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci beaucoup. I'll now turn to MP Allen for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for joining today. I would like to direct my questions to IRCC. My first question is to follow up on what Mrs. Gray was asking. Do we have numbers as far as what percentage of capacity each processing center in Canada is at right now, as far as employees that are working inside of those processing centers?
Thank you very much for the question. We are working at full capacity when it comes to actual processing. All our employees are working hard to reduce our inventories. It doesn't matter whether they are sitting in an office at a distance or at an overseas office. We have an integrated processing network, and we move our cases around to where we have capacity to process.
Thank you. Do we also have numbers of the amount of employees that were laid off or fired due to the vaccine mandates?
Thank you very much for the question. Unfortunately, I'm not privy to those type of statistics.
Is there anyone from IRCC that can provide that information in writing to the committee?
We'll undertake to look into it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So if the committee can have those IRCC employees that were laid off or fired due to vaccine mandates, and the reason why I bring that up is because we obviously have this historic backlog of 2.4 million it just keeps going up, and processing is a huge issue right now. And what we know is that everywhere else people are getting rid of these mandates, and in some cases like Service Canada, they're not bringing back some of those employees, and training new employees takes that much more time and effort and money. Is anyone on this Zoom right now able to answer how long it typically takes to train a new employee in IRCC?
Thank you very much for the question. I can only answer in generalities, but all our decision makers are appropriately trained on our immigration and IRPA and processes. As I understand, the vaccine mandate is being lifted on the 20th of June, and I can't speak as to how many people were put on leave without pay due to that. We are working very hard to increase our staff using the money that was given to us to reduce inventories, and we are in a constant state of hiring and training our staff to better meet our processing demands.
And just a quick question, for the vaccine mandates prior to June 20th, did those same vaccine mandates apply to processing centers that were not inside of Canada, so the ones that were abroad?
We don't have that detail. We can undertake to get that to the member.
Yes, please. If we can have those numbers, also if there was vaccine mandates, and if we can get those numbers on how long it takes. I also want to ask: is there a general figure on how much it costs per employee to train them? And the reason why I'm asking these questions is because if it's taking that much more time and more money to train people because of these vaccine mandates, which obviously are proven now that they're unscientific, like we could catch up on some of this backlog, in my opinion.
Thank you very much for the question. Unfortunately, I do not have a specific answer of how much it costs to train each employee, but IRCC takes training seriously and makes sure that every employee has the proper tools and training in order to do their job.
Thank you, MP Allen. As much as I appreciate your line of questions, we have to move to our last questioner. Your time is up, so we'll move to Mr. Fillmore for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for joining us today. I want to go backward and touch on a few items that have been raised and go a little bit deeper on them. The first is on the foreign student limit of hours per week question, and I guess I was a little disappointed to hear that there doesn't appear to be any ongoing or current discussion at IRCC about changing that 20-hour limit. I mean, for a couple of reasons, I don't think it's the role of government to act like a parent to foreign students to protect their study time when they are largely adults and are asking very articulately and clearly to have those hours increased so that they can meet the growing cost of education and the cost of living, and in the midst of a labor crisis. So there are people that really need to be hiring those students, and there are job vacancies, as we've heard. So I guess I just want to sort of put it on the record for our committee that I think it would be very appropriate for a finding of this study to include a recommendation to amend that 20 hours or eliminate it entirely. I don't know if there's anything IRCC wanted to add to that. Is there, if I misheard, is there anything going on currently to look at that figure?
I would say in general, given the labor shortage which we've identified, we are looking as much as possible into facilitation measures that would balance the needs of the Canadian labor market, the ability for the student to come here and actually study, and acknowledging the fact that students, one of the requirements for student to be here is that they already have the funds for their studies. But certainly, with respect to those flexibilities, that there were multiple ones that were put into effect during COVID. With respect to facilitation of international students and some of the rules around, virtual study and postgraduate work eligibility, permit extensions, and with respect to the 20 hours a week that the members have mentioned, certainly such would be considered among other facilitation measures that may be under discussion at this point. With respect to students, but with respect to other streams, including workers and in permanent residents. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to switch gears now to another thing that was already raised, which is the business of working from home, working remotely. So in many cities in Canada, primarily the provincial capitals, there's a large concentration of public sector employees, including federal employees, that are in part responsible for the health of the SME ecosystem in the downtowns, keeping restaurants busy, galleries open, dry cleaners going. But evident in Ottawa, evident in my hometown of Halifax, buildings are sitting empty and restaurants are sitting half full. I understand that much of the decision-making on whether or not people are asked to return to work in person has devolved to the regional director level or managerial level. But I wanted to just hear from each of the four departments or offices that are represented today, is there any centralized program from the top down, not devolved to regional, to get people, the word on the street is bums back in seats, to get bums back in seats to activate the SMEs. So maybe I'll just start with IRCC. Is there anything happening centrally?
Thank you for the question. With respect to IRCC, as the member has mentioned, as the COVID pandemic has waned, the department is looking at, in some cases, gradual return to work for some employees, depending, but it's a heterogeneous workforce, so there are different needs depending on the different sectors of IRCC. And also, the department is exploring hybrid work where feasible and where possible, such that there's opportunity for employees to be able to work from home when appropriate.
Thank you. Sorry to cut you off. I want to hear from the other three departments, and there's just a minute left, so that's okay. Stats Canada? Any centralized efforts?
Yes. Well, Statistics Canada has operations from across the country, and we've always had a mobile workforce, particularly in terms of interviewers. We will continue to work in a hybrid fashion, just as we have sort of for years. We do have, we are monitoring this centrally, and we're working on making sure that we sort of maximize our effectiveness and our ability to deliver service to Canadians.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Stats Canada is an anchor tenant in the office building where my constituency office is in downtown Halifax, and it's a dark, quiet, empty anchor tenant office there at the moment. How about you, Mr. Van Ralt? Anything to report
on? So those employment responsibilities are delegated to each and every deputy minister, so they're centralized through the efforts that deputies are making within their departments.
Okay, and did I get everybody? Who am I missing?
Competition Bureau.
Competition Bureau, yeah.
Happy to give a response. So Competition Bureau is an independent agency, but we take guidance in this respect from Innovation, Science and Economic Development. And these policies are being communicated to employees in real time as to what the future of work and return to the workplace will look like.
Okay, thanks for that. It sounds like, Mr. Chair, the broad answer is there remains a lot of flexibility, but probably no centralized directives to get people back to work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fillmore. We still have about 7 to 10 minutes left. So I have Mr. Massé, Mr. Lemire, Mr. Dong, and Mr. Hallen. So each get about 2 minutes. Keep your questions brief and your answers brief, please, witnesses. So Mr. Massé, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Real quick, and it's just to reconfirm with IRCC that we'll get a response back about, especially the strategies evolving around closing of infrastructure, being in the Windsor area in particular. We have a battery plant that's been announced, thousands of new jobs in the auto sector that are at risk for not having the skilled labor force. And I'm just hoping that I'll get a review as to whether or not this infrastructure could be reopened for the particular problems that I've outlined before.
Thank you, Chair. This has been noted, the member's request.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your work and that all the members do. We have really good, hardworking people, and it's a difficult one, but it's also an opportunity. Thank you again, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire.
Merci.
Thank you. I would like to plead for citizenship and immigration, the crying need to have your services in a region in Abitibi-Témiscamingue. It's a crying need. Hopefully, Service Canada offices will be able to answer the needs. Immigration is a need. It's an essential need for our businesses. My question, citizenship and immigration, we've seen all the obstacles and the refusal rates for people coming from Francophone Africa. The refusal proportion from students from Congo, Senegal, Cameroon can be over 80%. Some institutions are receiving foreign students. This allows to have a greater financial margin of maneuver and can ensure survival. For us, it's over 50% of the students are foreigners. How can we explain these high refusal rates? The decisions made by IRCC, might they be tainted by prejudices? We've seen that IRCC has faced these types of problems in the past. So concretely, what are remedies? It's not an issue of a lack of time. We are dealing with a high refusal rate here.
Thank you very much for your question. As my colleague earlier said, we are training all our officers on anti-bias and anti-racism training, and we are working hard to address unconscious bias and to ensure consistency in decision-making across the globe.
Donc, est-ce qu'on peut...
So can we understand that the Chinook system is the cause? Have you solved the problems with the Chinook system?
Chinook is just a processing tool. It does not add any bias to a person's decision making. It just makes it easier to see all the information for specific files in front of you.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. Je passerai à...
Thank you, Mr. Lemire. Mr. Fillmore.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. To go back then to the question of credentials, I'm wondering perhaps if Stats Canada has any data on how many people who are trained but have not been credentialed in Canada we've all been in the taxi driven by an engineer. Is there any quantification of that phenomenon that Stats Canada has or could make?
Maybe if I can refer that question to Madame Bégin.
Yes, thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Yes, we do have some information of Canadians that were trained outside of Canada and whether or not they are working in the same industry as their credentials. So
could you table that with the committee?
Yes, we could.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Fillmore. We'll move finally to MP Hallan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to follow up on a line of questioning by my colleague from the block. There was a Polaro report that came out last year about racism in IRCC that is also contributing to a lot of the backlog and the toxic environment in IRCC that may be affecting some of the racialized employees. We know for a fact that in our immigration committee, there has been not a single person reprimanded or fired. It's been 2 years since this anti-racism task force has been struck. We also know that there's been managers that obviously had some of these racist tendencies, have even gotten bonuses. And as far as the witnesses on this Zoom right now, is there anyone that can you confirm if any employee has either been reprimanded or fired for racist behavior since that report came out?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. No, we don't have access to those human resources statistics at hand, but I can say that the department is taking anti-racism efforts very seriously and attempting to sensitize employees, train employees, and put very concrete goals.
Sorry,
with respect to
respectfully, just before I hand over to my colleague, Mrs. Gray, I would just like to note that it's been 2 years since that task force has been struck. Not a single person has been reprimanded or fired, and there has been bonuses given to those same managers who have exhibited racist behavior. So there must be some type of action taken, and we don't see any of that. I don't think the public does either, because it's never been brought forward. So I just wanted to make sure that was in the record. I'll pass it on to Mrs. Gray.
Is there still time? Thank you, Mr. Chair. It looks like I just have one quick question. So we've heard today from IRCC that their processing times are not meeting their standards, and in many cases are double what the processing times would be. And so in your department, do you still have people that are officials and senior leaders in your department that received bonuses even during this time where standards were not met?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. We wouldn't be privy to the bonus structure, the bonuses being provided to others within IRCC.
Thank you very much to all of our witnesses. Thank you for making.
Il y a une traductrice qui voudrait intervenir. Ou pas? OK, je pensais que vous vouliez intervenir. C'est bon. Merci.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. So I just want to thank all witnesses for making yourselves available on this beautiful Friday afternoon. And beyond that, thank you for your service to Canadians on behalf of the entire committee. And thanks to all members, thanks to the analysts. Merci aux interprètes, aux greffiers, au personnel de soutien. Bonne fin de semaine à tous. Prenez bien soin de vous. Cette rencontre est à journée.